I'm very excited to be celebrating 200 years of my hometown, Athens, Tennessee. And as they say, a community is made up of its people, and we've been blessed with some great people throughout our 200 years. R.J. Fisher comes to mind. Robert Fisher, inventor of the Fisher typewriter and founder of the Athens hosiery mill and proprietor of the Fisher Mansion, which is just across the street and up the hill from the E.G. Fisher Library, named for his son. John Tyler Morgan was born near the intersection of Old Nida Road, Ingleside Avenue. He didn't spend a lot of time here, but he was born here. He served in the United States Senate, and he's also a Civil War veteran, and he helped with the development of Muscle Shoals in North Alabama and with the Panama Canal. Feb Byrne, born Feb Ensminger in the Mount Verde area. She attended U.S. Grant University, now Tennessee Wesleyan University, and she, of course, is known for writing a letter to her son, Harry T. Byrne, asking him to change his vote and vote for the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote across the entire country. E.B. Madison, the namesake of Madison Avenue, formerly Main Street. E.B. Madison was a graduate of U.S. Grant University, now Tennessee Wesleyan, and he was a prominent attorney here, very well respected in Democratic Party circles. Tom Sherman, a big businessman in this community from a very prominent family. He owned the Sherman Concrete Pipe Company, which had offices all over the Southeast. Very successful man, very eccentric man too. Professor W.E. Nash, an African-American educator, and also involved with the development of the First United Presbyterian Church on North Jackson Street. Harold Prof. Powers, as you all may have known him. He was a longtime educator, a principal of City Park High School, mayor of Athens, school board member, founder of the school camp in Meigs County, conservationist. Nadine Cunningham, who was a longtime register of deeds in this county, worked at the courthouse for 54 years, prominent in Republican Party circles. Burkett Witt, the first elected African-American mayor of Athens and founder of a restaurant, Burkett's, one of our finest citizens, still with us today. And also still with us today is Norbert Corn White, who served 40 years as the circuit court clerk in our community. This is some of just many great Athenians throughout our history. So come on down to the Historical Society and learn more about them.
Happy birthday to the City of Athens and the citizens who are blessed to get to call Athens home, the friendly city. Steve, appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about Athens and its history and its present condition and hopefully what we want in the future. But Athens is a very unique town, I believe. When you look through its history, I like the fact that it harkens back to the birthplace of democracy, and I think that's really appropriate given Athens' history going through the Battle of Athens. Every now and then people say, what's really special about Athens? There's a lot of small towns throughout America that are in that 15,000 range. I said it's the people, and they're very passionate. They're passionate about their history. They're passionate about their government. They're passionate about their freedom, and they're passionate about their faith. They're passionate about education. They're just really passionate about all aspects of life, and they want a good quality of life. So they're really passionate about fairness. I think if you look back through, that's really what ties it in with their namesake of Athens, Greece. So Athens is known as an educational center with a university, but even going back through the years of being the leaders in local public education, back before integration, Athens was a center of black education and really literally renowned throughout the region for education. And so I think they carry that forward today, especially with being the home of Tennessee Wesleyan University and just a great commitment to local education as well. Athens wants to be a place that has a great quality of life, and they have a very active Parks and Recreation department. I think most people, when they visit Athens and they ask me, what's the population? I say, well, 14,000. They say, it feels like it has 50,000. And I said, well, it's because it's a center hub in the region for a lot of things, whether it be business and industry, healthcare, and education and retail. So it always has that bigger feel. And actually, on a daily basis, I think by vehicle count, there's over 30-something 30,000 people in the city at any time during the day. So that's why it does feel so much bigger. It's just a great quality of life, great location. I think the future's so bright for Athens, given that it's right between two metropolitan areas that, quite frankly, you can get to either Chattanooga or Knoxville quicker than some of those residents in those two towns can get across their town. So if you live in South Chattanooga, we can probably get to North Chattanooga quicker than they can, and the same way for Knoxville. So it's a great city to live in, great people, great faith, and we wish them a great happy birthday, a wonderful bicentennial, and congratulations.
Hello, I'm Bo Perkinson, Mayor of the City of Athens. Glad to be here and share some information about the 200th anniversary of the City of Athens. My 200 years for the friendly city. A lot of people have contributed, a lot of businesses, a lot of entities have contributed to the growth and prosperity of the City of Athens over these 200 years. But we had to lay a foundation. We've had to lay a foundation for investment, for people to feel comfortable, to have confidence in making investment in this community. Certainly our city government has been a part of that. The city departments, the Athens Utility Board, the City of Athens City Schools all fall under the city, and the city management over those years have contributed to that foundation, that level of confidence that's made folks pleased about making investment in our community. The financial management certainly has been very important. Tennessee Wesleyan University began in 1857, and that's certainly an important part, as well as Cleveland State Community College has a branch here, and Tennessee Technical School has a location here too, so showing our focus on education. The solid banking environment here over the years changed a lot over the last 200 years. The Wilson family and other families that have contributed to that has been very important, as well as the medical community, and Starr Regional Medical Center being the foundation of that. Specifically, in the post-Civil War time of the city, while we had quite a bit of investment started in the early 1920s, certainly textile and furniture was very important at that time. Athens hosiery mills, started by the Fishers, Crescent, Nauta hosiery mill, all was very big in this community. Athens bed and Athens table were very important in the furniture manufacturing. Then Mayfield Dairy came utilizing the cattle farms in this whole region, and then turn around and provide dairy and milk products to this whole area. Certainly Bowater paper mill was very important. It started in 1952, the largest paper mill in North America, in PI. And then fast forward to today, we have Denso Manufacturing, which is a Fortune 500 company, and a lot of other auto manufacturers and a diverse financial industry, along with the retail businesses. We appreciate all of them that have created jobs in this community and made the investment and helped make Athens what it is today.
So the friendly city has always been a place that's been identified as halfway between, in the middle of. When we talk about our community nowadays, we talk about it's halfway between Knoxville and Chattanooga. But even before our European ancestors settled in this area, this was Cherokee land. And the Cherokee even referred to this as a place halfway between. At that time, it was known as halfway between the villages of Great Tellico and the Great Hiwassee. And then we go back to the actual founding of Athens, why it was chosen as a spot. It was, again, in the middle of McMinn County back in 1822. The name Athens was derived by Elijah Hurst because of the topography of Athens. He thought it related very closely to ancient Athens, Greece. Now, what makes Athens special for the last 200 years will drive us far into the future, and it's, of course, our people. It is our endurance, our ability to work together in the spirit of community. It's our learnedness and our entrepreneurial spirit that's always been exhibited. We started in 1857 with Athens Female College. That moved to Grant Memorial, and later, now today, is Tennessee Wesleyan University. We had the second oldest high school in the state of Tennessee with McMinn County High School. And Athens City Schools was started in 1903, that same year. We also have J.L. Cook School that helped serve African Americans when our community was segregated, like our nation was. Women's suffrage, the professional management model for local and county government all has roots right here in Athens, Tennessee. The Trail of Tears, the Civil War, and urban renewal all shaped our community over the past decades. This remains a very special place. We are always moving forward. We are seeing today unprecedented progress. We're rebuilding the friendly city so that all people can succeed from here and far into our future.
Welcome to Athens Treasures Live. I'm your host, Stephen Sherlin, and we're collaborating with the McMinn County Historical Society and the City of Athens, Tennessee, in the Bicentennial of Athens itself. 200 years. Wow. Well, in this series that you're going to be watching, there's going to be several guest hosts as we go along from town to town, filming the history of McMinn County. It all began here in Calhoun. In 1819, when the Hiwassee Purchase took place, Calhoun was settled, and Major John Walker, who had 640 acres from the Indian reservations of that time during the Hiwassee Purchase, had a home here. And in that home, the state established the courts during that period of time. And then in 1821, the legislature sent a letter to the commissioners of the county at that time. They said to the commissioners, it's time to pick a county seat. And so they said in that letter, if you choose Calhoun, then buy the land, lay it out, and send us the information. They said, as they went on in the letter, if it's not Calhoun and it's Columbus, which was the second choice, then buy the land, lay it out, and let us know. And then they said, thirdly, if it's not Columbus and it's somewhere else, and they drew a blank line in that letter, buy the land, lay it out, and let us know. And so we're going to go on a journey from here and see how the commissioners went about throughout the county searching for a county seat. Athens itself was unknown. It wasn't even established in that time. And so, about spring of 1822, after giving a lot of consideration and thought to the fact of Calhoun was already established, the courts were here, they couldn't come to a consensus, and they decided that they would move on and Calhoun would not be the county seat. So they go to Columbus. And where is Columbus? It's in the southeast corner of McMinn County on the Hiwassee River, which was the line during that day. And so they go to Columbus. It was a very busy trading post down there. It was on the Federal Road. It was a very busy place indeed. John Hildebrand had been commissioned to put up a mill there in 1808, and by 1810 it was in operation for the Cherokee Indian. And then in 1819, when John C. Calhoun came about with the treaty for the Hiwassee Purchase, the Cherokees ceded all the land down to the Hiwassee River over to the American government. And Tennessee expanded its borders, and McMinn County and Monroe County were formed in 1819. And so down here in Columbus they went. And we'll see as we travel on down into Columbus what transpired there. And then from there we'll move on to other areas as they do their search diligently for the county seat of McMinn. Well, I hope you'll find this very interesting as we go about our search. I hope you'll listen to each one as they give their account in each place that we visit. And then following, you will also see several interviews from our city and county leaders. So thank you, and we hope you enjoy this bicentennial video.
"68 years ago, boat waters came to McMinn County. It impacted Athens tremendously. I am a product of that building coming here, that plant. It was the first major plant to come to McMinn County. There were 18 Canadian families that came to Tennessee with boat waters, and 10 of them settled in Calhoun, 4 of them settled in Athens. It contributed to the county income. It contributed to the growth of McMinn County and Athens. And we here, Athenians, need to understand that we had bigger roads, we had more income because boat waters paid union wages. For the first time, quite honestly, an industry came in to pay union wages, so the Athenians and the McMinn Countyans got to earn a living wage when in fact they were not prior to boat waters coming in 1954. As a product of that move, I have served Athens for 20 years as a council member. So Athens benefits by having me serve on the council as a product of boat waters and a transfer from Canada. That's the connection between boat waters, McMinn County, and Athens, Tennessee.
My name is Ray Johnson. I was born and raised here in Athens, the friendly city. And as part of this 200-year anniversary, I would like to tell a story, a true story of something that happened to me here in Athens. In history, we always have the good, the bad, and the ugly. But let me set the stage for this story. It was in a time when we lived in a very segregated society. We couldn't go through the front doors. We had to drink from different fountains and things of that nature. That's where we were at the time. We had to go through the side doors of the theater, and that's where my story begins. It was around 1964-65 when the Civil Rights Bill was signed that I could go through the front door of any public place. So a friend of mine named William Gibson came to me and said, "Man, let's go to the Strand Theater. We'd be the first blacks to go through the front door." Well, you got to realize I was just about a 15, 16-year-old kid, and our parents would never approved of it if they knew that's what we was going to do. So me and him decided to go on to the theater. So we did. We got to the front door. The lady selling ticket, you could tell that she was reluctant of selling us the ticket, but she had to. So we bought the ticket. So you can imagine, we went in, got harassed verbally. People threw ice at us, popcorn at us, called us all sorts of names. We went to the manager. He came, and you could tell he didn't much care. He just said, "Go take your seat, I'll take care of it." So at that time, it used to be what they call a double feature. And I was never at ease the whole time we was there. But my friend, he was gung-ho. He didn't care. So I told him, I said, man, let's go. He said, now we got one more movie to see. So we sit there, and about the end of that second movie, I kept saying, man, we need to leave. And about that time, about 3 or 4 white guys came and sit down behind us. And I heard some bottles clinking together, and I knew they didn't sell drinks in a bottle. So as we were getting ready to exit, going down the aisle, I could see through the corner of my eye, one boy threw a bottle, and it busted my head open, and they started running. And my friend, he just jumped the seats, and he chased them. They ran. Well, I was staggering around, addled, bleeding, and I got out into the vestibule of the theater. And I remember these. Now remember, I'm just a 15-year-old kid, and here's about 3 or 4 older, grown white men got around me and said, let's get this nigger. And I remember I had a little pocket knife in my pocket, and I pulled it out and backed up against the wall, and then my buddy came back, and then about that time the manager came and he took us to his office. But during that whole ordeal, me bleeding, hurt, injured, he never once mentioned taking me to the doctor. We had to call my uncle, who at the time was the principal of Cook School, and he came and took us to the hospital. And I think I got 4 or 5 stitches during that time. I guess so. In closing, we've come a long ways, but we still got a long ways to go. So that's one of my many memories of living in that time period. It was, like I said, it was a very segregated period. But you know, as I think about it, going through the side door and up the steps to the balcony, we really had the best seats in the theater. But anyway, that's one of the things that I will never forget. And like I said, my parents would never have approved that if they knew that's what we were doing, because they were more afraid than we were, because that's the way they was brought up, that you didn't do this, you didn't do that. But thanks be to God, I made it through it, and today I'm proud of what I experienced, and that's it.
Hello and welcome as we find ourselves here in Columbus. And you say, Columbus? Yes, we're in Columbus on our adventure following these commissioners of 1822 as they seek out a place to acquire for a county seat in McMinn County. If you'll recall, we've already been to Calhoun, where actually the courts are already being held there. But in 1821, you'll recall, the legislature sent a letter to the commissioners and told them to find a county seat. Well, Calhoun was the first choice. Didn't work out. So here we find ourselves in Columbus, which was the second choice given to the commissioners by the legislature. So here we are today with Marion Presswood, who is the president of the Polk County Historical Society. She is the county historian and archivist and a retired teacher and educator. And she's here today with us to share a little bit about Columbus. Marion?
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for the opportunity to congratulate the friendly city of Athens on its 200th birthday. Can you even imagine 200 years? I thought of that, and then I thought, you know what? if I had two grandmothers who lived to be 100 years each, and I have had some long livers, that's all it would take to go back to 1822, would be two grandmothers living 100 years each. So that's quite an honor, and thank you so much for the opportunity to congratulate you on that. This is the site of the old town of Columbus. We're sitting on some of the foundations of the first mill. The date I don't think is exact when John Hildebrand came here. Usually people say he was sent here to build a mill from the Dearborn Treaty. That was part of the deal, build us a mill, and they really needed one, and he was the fellow to do it. If you could get down in there and see, there were two limestone rocks there that made that squeeze that kind of sort of a creek. Can you believe it's a creek? It looks like a river. Squeeze that, and the water came through the crease with, so it was a good place to put a mill wheel in there. That was in 1808. Supposed to have it done by within 2 years, and it was. And had little Indian towns all along, mostly on the south side, some here on the east side. And a pretty good sized population grew up around that mill. A couple of hundred people, several houses, and a store with a hotel, which was moved to Denton after the demolition of Columbus. Is it 17 miles or so to Athens?
It's about 14
miles.
Yeah.
And so that wasn't so bad coming from north, east, west, and all around to go there. Columbus had its heyday, but like a lot of, we're right in the middle of the ant hills. They're all over there. You see it right there? We're right in the middle of it. Excuse us, but we're being attacked by black ants.
We are.
They're just swarming right there at our feet. After the Civil War, well, let me tell you about the mill. The Columbus Mill, I just saw an article in the Polk County News that said it ground its last bushel of corn, wheat, or whatever, on Confederate History Day in 1922. So we've been going along 100 years, hasn't it? From 1908, 9, so to 1922. So it was a long time. Of course, after the mill was down, after the Cherokees were forced removal, it just died. The last building was torn down, and a pontoon bridge across the creek here, and probably on down, they had to cross the Wassee River, probably crossed that. So it just disappeared pretty much by, I think it was incorporated, believe it or not, and in 1850 they pulled the incorporation and said, you're not big enough to even be thought about, so they were no longer incorporated. So that's Columbus, and it's what happened. It was, can you imagine, wouldn't you like to have been one of those little ants on the wall or on the ground in the day when it had 200 members, when it had a store, when the Indians were the ones that did most of the trading here. Wonderful place.
Well, thank you, Marion. And I'm sorry that we ended up on an anthill. That was interesting. As Marion gave the account, they are eating us alive. So we'll wrap this up. Columbus was eventually disregarded by the commissioners for reasons Marion gave, that a lot of them wanted to go more toward the center of the county. There was also a land dispute going on in Columbus at that time from one of the reservees who had been given a 640-acre land grant during the Hiwassee Purchase, and it was going to court in Knoxville, and the commissioners just didn't want to waste time with that, so they decided to follow the urgings of those who wanted to go more toward the center of the county, and so they picked up and moved on up toward a little place called Pumpkin Town. It wasn't Pumpkin Town itself, but it was near there, and that will be our next stop as we follow these county commissioners on their adventures trying to find and acquire land for the county seat. Athens was unknown at that time, and we'll see how it came about. So thank you, Marion, so much, and follow us now as we go on our way.
Happy 200.
Hello, Athenians and McMinn Countyans. I'm Mark Lockmiller, Mayor of Athens, Tennessee, and here to talk about the bicentennial of our great city. I was born and raised here, love Athens, moved off for a little bit during college, and right after I got married and a job offer came open, I came back, ended up raising my family here, product of the city schools, and my kids went to, my son went to the Athens City Middle School, and just love everything about it. Athens has come a long way in the 200 years, educationally, for example. We went from, started out with, one-room schoolrooms, and now we're in the process of building one of the nicest schools that's going to be around. Everybody's going to come around and look at it and be amazed at it. It'll be a model for other school buildings in other communities. Middle school is getting revamped a little bit on structure, and it'd be a real nice building in itself. The public works, I think we have one of the best public works departments working on our streets and infrastructure all through the town. I think it's something to be amazed at in its own right. Parks and Rec. I know people come from all over to come to our Parks and Rec. At one time, Athens didn't have a Parks and Rec department as much as in the beginnings of everything else that we've had. We had to start somewhere, and we started, and it's grown. The people come all over the area, out of Athens, out of McMinn, to participate in our Parks and Rec department. Athens is a great community. I look forward to the future, and not just in the last 200 years, but what the next 200 years brings to Athens and the further growth that we'll be continually doing.
I did not grow up in Athens, Tennessee. My father was in the military, and we traveled all around the world. And later in middle school, I moved to Athens and was very upset with my dad, wondering why he would bring us to finish our lives in such a small, different kind of community. There were very little things to do, so I got really involved in school and studying and becoming part of the school community and education community. But the biggest thing that helped me to feel grounded in Athens was being part of the local church. When we moved here, we were not so invested in a church because of all the moves. And so coming here and seeing how all of the different churches came together to fellowship, all the preachers seemed to be friends with one another regardless of their denomination, whether it was the AME Zion Church that my family attended, or the AOH Church of God, which my dad's mother was part of, or the Baptist Church, who many of my friends attended. And there were probably a few other denominations, but we all came together for fellowship. Whenever someone passed in the black community, all of the churches would come together and provide meals for the family. And then on the day of the final service, they would come together and cook a repast for the family and for the community to come together and celebrate that life after the funeral service ended. But one of the biggest things for me growing up was being part of the Community Vacation Bible School. We had Vacation Bible School on the ground of the old Forest Hill School. That was the Baptist church at the time, and the pastor there and other pastors would lead a Vacation Bible School for the adults, and then various people would lead one for the children. And so if I can say that any part of Athens history is really important to me, it is the history of the local black church.
hello. Here we are on our adventures, still following these McMinn County commissioners of 1822 all over McMinn County as they seek to acquire land for a county seat as directed by the legislature in the fall of 1821. And here it is, the spring of 1822, as we follow them here and to the center of the county. Already we've seen that Calhoun didn't work out for them, which was the first choice of the legislature given to them in a letter. And then the second choice was given to them to go to Columbus. There they went in the southeast corner of McMinn County on the Hiwassee River, and that didn't work out either. So here we are today in Cedar Springs, just about 2 miles from present-day Athens, 5 miles from Pumpkin Town, which was mentioned as this place being nearby. And so this was their first choice here in Cedar Springs. And we come to the land of Reuben Cassida, who was the third great-grandfather of Glenda Baker Kelly, who's here with us today to share with us a little bit about her family, this land, and what the commissioners asked when they approached him. Glenda?
Hi, Steve. How are you today?
Good.
Reuben Cassida was my great-great-grandfather, and he came on a land grant in 1822 from the Hiwassee Land Grant. The commissioners came to him and asked him to donate 5 acres for the City of Athens to be established on his land, and he refused, according to family stories.
And so when he refused, they probably offered him a little money too.
I think so. I think that they did offer him a little money, but he also refused the money.
He would rather keep his land than give it up for a county seat.
Exactly.
And so the journey continues. The commissioners had to give up on this idea here, a little bit south of present-day Athens, which was their first choice. And so they move forward. They go north just about 2 miles to a place owned by William Lowry, who had established a mill there in that little community. And but before we go there, we're going to travel on up to Pumpkin Town, let you see a little bit of what that area looks like, so you'll know a little bit more about Pumpkin Town and why it really wasn't really where Athens is today. So come along with us as we continue on our journey and our adventure with these commissioners of 1822. Thank you, Glenda.
You're welcome, Steve.
Hey everybody, this is Jordan Curtis, Athens City Council member. It's a great honor to be participating in this video as the Friendly City celebrates 200 years. It's difficult to compress so much history into a few minutes, but I want to talk a little bit about the history of learning and education in our community. When we think of Athens, Greece, we think of a center of learning, and our own Friendly City, Athens, has that great tradition as well. We have to talk about first Tennessee Wesleyan University, 1857, which is now under the leadership of a native Athenian for the first time in its history, President Dr. Tyler Forrest. We have to talk about 1965, when the Athens State Area Vocational Technical School opened to provide occupational training and technical training to people in our community. We have to talk about 1903, McMinn County High School, the oldest high school in East Tennessee and the second oldest high school in the state. And certainly we have to talk about last year when the McMinn County Higher Education Center opened as a collaboration between TCAT, Cleveland State Community College, and UT Ag Extension to provide synergy and further the mission of workforce development and education and training in our community. We also have to talk about our current Athens City Schools building program, which is a community effort to provide state-of-the-art facilities for our pre-K through 5th grade students that's going to be opening in the school year of 2023. We have a great long tradition and history of learning in this community, and we look forward to continuing that for the next 200 years.
This is an opportunity for me to stand and think about the 200-year anniversary of our county in McMinn County. So I'm thankful as I sit here and think about this. I'm a transplant into McMinn County. I was born in Birmingham, Alabama. Some may know me, some may not. My name is Vant, V-A-N-T, Hardaway. My dad was a local pastor, and we moved as a family to McMinn County in 1957. So we relocated. He did a work with the church there, and so we started our life. And so since then, I have been one way or the other connected in this county. Both my parents are now deceased, and we've been with them. I grew up in the area, went to J.L. Cook School until my graduating year, which I graduated in 1967. And so when I got there, I guess I was one of the beginnings of the first full class to go to McMinn County High School. And then after that, with the grace of the good Lord, I got a chance to go to Tennessee Wesleyan College, which is now Tennessee Wesleyan University, and I finished there because the only other option would have been to go to the military. And while I believe in what we could have done in the military, I had a desire to maybe go on and do professional education. So we really started a new part in our career here in McMinn County. And as I'm here now, after graduating from Tennessee Wesleyan, I then moved to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, got a job as an educator. I was a teacher and a coach, and there in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, lived there for 7 years. Then we moved to Nashville, Tennessee, and I lived there 8 years. My years in McMinn County, from the time from 57 until moving away in 1971, it was a good community, but it changed. You that are part of this community know the historical change in McMinn County, just like we could think about anywhere else in the South. It was a segregated community, and we went through it, but we worked with people, got along well with people, and things went on. So when I'm now looking at McMinn County after leaving, being gone 15 years, I returned in order to help my parents, and they both transitioned. What can I say about McMinn County? In the years I've been back, I have worked in education in a number of different career paths. I think it's helped me individually and hopefully given me an opportunity to work in the wider community with others. When I go back and look, yes, there is a continued challenge in our nation and in our world right now. But areas are what they are because of how the people come together and work together. So some people that may know Van Hardaway, I may have known students or parents, they may have worked in the other areas with them. McMinn County right now in its 200-year anniversary has come a long way. If we will make the commitment to continue to work with each other, to come together in the things we do, whether it's religion or whether it's the ways we work with others in our community and society, then we can keep building on that. What would I say our challenge is? Our challenge is to find a way to reach to each other and be relational. Some of us may be more connected in other areas in our community, whether it be that we're doing things in the society. Yes, if a person comes into McMinn County, they may say, well, how are we? How are we as far as being diverse, and how are we as being open for differences? It's a good place. Go back and look. We have not had some of the major challenges that we could have because some people work together. And as you remember, go back and remember some of the people that you've known and worked through in this community. So I'm saying our challenge is to now, as we recognize the 200-year anniversary, looking back at the past for our 200 years, and now evaluate our future, our present, and then let's plan how we can come together, work in our community to go forth in the future. We look at the present, go forth into the future, and I think we can see some things. We have work to do. Yes, we have people that may see some things different, but when we sit down to the table, and I guess I would use the term the table of brotherhood, because we don't have any more land. So we're going to have to learn how to get along together. So this is a good piece for me, and I'm thankful to recognize where I am, and let's continue to work together and make it better. Let's remember the next years as long as the good Lord lets us be here. Thank you.
Hello and welcome as we continue our journey following these commissioners of 1822 throughout McMinn County as they search for land to acquire for a county seat. Already we've found that Calhoun was eliminated, Columbus was eliminated, Cedar Springs was eliminated, and now we find ourselves here in Pumpkin Town. They were told that there was a place near a place called Pumpkin Town that might be available for a county seat. Well, Pumpkin Town was never really the place, but we came here today to let you see a little bit about Pumpkin Town and know a little bit more about it. And we have here with us today Meredith Wilson of Wilsonthropic Inc. And she's also in charge of many of the festivals, including Pumpkin Town in Athens. And we're glad to have Meredith with us today. Meredith, you're here to share with us a little bit about Pumpkin Town.
I am indeed. Good morning. It's great to be with you all here at this beautiful piece of property here in McMinn County. Behind me is what we believe is to be an old Indian mound, which marks the settlement that was known as Pumpkin Town back in the early 1800s. Pumpkin Town was a settlement that had its own post office. It was known to be a very popular thoroughfare from Monroe County down here to McMinn County with Indians, traders, and it also had its own trading post. As you can see, this is a beautiful piece of our property here, and Pumpkin Town was well known in this region to be a trading post, and also at one point legend says that it was considered at one time to be the county seat for Athens or McMinn County, and unfortunately it didn't make the cut. But we've decided in 2002 that it would be great to commemorate this part of our county and our city heritage by doing a festival we call Pumpkin Town that celebrates our rich heritage of farming and our Indian culture and our rich cultural history here in McMinn County.
Well, thank you, Meredith, for sharing with us today about Pumpkin Town. It was fascinating to know more of the history of Pumpkin Town during this bicentennial event of Athens as we go with these commissioners trying to find out where all they went looking for a county seat. And Meredith has shared with us a little bit more about the truth of Pumpkin Town.
Thank you, Stephen, and we hope you all will join us on Saturday, October the 8th in downtown Athens to celebrate Pumpkin Town.
When you say 200 years, Athens is still very young, and the police department's even younger. It goes back to when we had town marshals in the early 1900s. The first mention of a police officer was in 1903, and then you skip on up to 1926 when we have our first police department budget and you hear the first mention of a chief of police. So when I think of Athens and think of the history, I think back on the beginnings of law enforcement and how far we progressed. And I still lean on the lessons learned and the mistakes that were made in the past as we move forward. And hopefully our legacy in another 200 years will be spoke about. When I think of Athens, I think of home. Athens is more than a city.
it's a home. And I'd rather not be from anywhere else but Athens, Tennessee.
My name's Brandon Ainsworth. I'm the fire chief for the City of Athens Fire Department. And today I'm glad to be a part of this celebration for the 200-year anniversary for the City of Athens. What a huge accomplishment. So with the Athens Fire Department over the years, you've seen drastic changes from our services we provide. Today our service delivery is much broader than it was a number of years ago. We're not just here running fire calls, we're doing car wrecks and medical calls and various types of fires. We do our own inspection enforcement. The guys are out here in all the businesses doing pre-plans and just a vast majority of things. So the changes that we've seen across the fire service over the years is just drastic, and it's still changing every single day. We have also discovered very recently that a 1925 American LaFrance pumper was the first fire engine driven by fuel powered that the City of Athens purchased for around $6,000. This truck is housed in the museum in Townsend, Tennessee, and what a beautiful piece that the gentleman and everybody involved done restoring this truck. You will get a special treat of that shortly in this video. As far as staffing goes, our staffing numbers have not increased much over the year. Today, with what we're looking at, the requirements for staffing is much higher than it was years ago. We're running seven personnel per shift. We operate 2 stations. That's not changed much over the years, but we're hoping as we continue to grow and watch the city grow that our manpower levels and stations availability of staffing will continue to grow along with the city.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Paul Ashby. I'm a volunteer here at the Heritage Center in Townsend, Tennessee. I work in the Acquisition and Restoration Department. This fire truck will do 3 different things other than just one thing. These were popular with rural fire departments because they could do so many things off of one truck. This truck is a 4-cylinder Wisconsin engine. This is the last ones they made. Everything after this was a lawnmower. And as you can see, everything is manual on this truck. In comparison to today's trucks, where much of the stuff is automatic, everything had to be done by the driver or the engineer. They'd start the truck with many different ways, being it's possible they could get out to a call at 3 a.m., and because it's a manual start or crank start, it was a little bit rough. What they did, they usually jacked up the back wheel and used it for a flywheel, starting the engine, getting on board, warming it up, and then going to the fire scene. As you look at the truck, you don't see anything unusual about it, but the first thing you want to notice is the rear tires. These trucks came with rear brakes only, so at any given time, you had 4 inches on either side of the truck getting traction to the pavement. If it was raining or snowing or anything of that nature, it was good to try and stop the truck about a block before you needed to get to the fire. As you can see, these are all manual pumps. They're handled by 2 different infusions or 2 ways of getting water in the truck. One is a suction line, the other is a hydrant. Back in 1925, there was a minimum of hydrants available. So most of these trucks were designed to bring water out of a creek or out of a well or a cistern system. We'll go around to the other side of the truck and I'll show you how it's done. This is your pump setup. When you're pulling suction for water onto the truck, you'll do it with these hoses. This hose will go into a well or go into a creek. You hook it up to the truck. You cut the vacuum on the truck. That causes water to come up the hose on the vacuum. This gauge will tell you to 30 degrees negative volume, which means the inside of that hose, the air is coming out and being released with this valve and filling up with water. Immediately upon reaching your goal of 100 pounds PSI, Then you go to this gauge and you give some water to the fireman at the end of the hose, just like that. You can feed off of both sides of the truck at the same time using an 1.5 inch hose. This part of the truck here, this is called a chemical tank. And what this does is feeds chemical to a fire that is gasoline, lubricants, fertilizers, where if water hits them, they become deadly or explosive. So your combination is made inside this tank of vinegar and soda that puts out fires. You get the same thing in using this fire extinguisher. Turn it upside down, it mixes, you turn it right side up, and you fight your fire. The tank up on top, that's our gas tank, of course. And right here in the middle, there's a hose reel that goes up here. It's not been installed yet for fighting small fires. As we go around the back of the truck, we'll see what we call the hose bunker, which is to say, one side of the truck handles 1.5 inch hose, the other side of the truck handles 2.5 inch hose. 2.5 inch comes off and hooks up and goes out to what they call a Siamese, which branches into 2 smaller hoses. Okay, when you're running on this truck, one of the most important tools that you're going to have as an engineer, actually one of the most important tools on the whole truck, is this tool right here. This is the hydrant tool. Back in 1925, all the hydrant companies had their own setup for opening and closing hydrants. There was no standardization as there is today. So all these different notches you see are all different ways or different companies to open a fire hydrant. So if you lost this, by the time you got to the hydrant, you have no idea whether you're going to be able to open the water or not. This nozzle is a quick nozzle. Up here we have a hose reel. This goes to that hose reel to put out vehicle fires or field fires or just small fires in general. Or it can be hooked up straight to the chemical tank, and this becomes a chemical nozzle. This is a little important thing for the engineer, the driver, because if he gets to a fire and he doesn't pull this up and go from the truck transmission to the pump, all of a sudden things start breaking really fast. This runs the pump and the transmission. You're either in one or in the other. Today's trucks can do both at the same time. You have a clutch, your dashboard, your pump, and a very special engine. This is a Wisconsin 4-cylinder inline engine with a Stromberg carburetor. This is the only one that you're going to see because they don't make them anymore. After this fire engine, they quit making truck engines and vehicle engines and went to lawnmowers and air compressors. So this is the only Wisconsin engine you're going to see that's not on a lawn. Naturally, every fire truck has a bell. When you get in the crowd, that may be your only way through. Next is our spotlight. These spotlights were set up so they could be put in any position, shown up on the building, and the firefighters have gone in. Next is the siren. Now, in this model fire truck, the siren went right here, and it was a hand crank siren. We improved it a little bit and put it out on the left front fender. So that people would know that we are coming. Now keep in mind that most fires back in the day happened in the night. People's kerosene heaters, fireplaces, whatnot, got out of control. They called the fire department. At 3 a.m., having to crank a fire truck is not fun. So what they do is 3 ways to start the truck. One is an electric starter that's down in the engine, like the electric starters you have today, that were not very dependable. They could or could not start the truck. The next way would be on the front of the truck, turning the crank. So you had 2 people in the truck, one turning the crank, one starting the truck. Or the third way, which was popular back then, because when this engine's cold, it doesn't want to start. They have one of the rear wheels jacked up. They spin the wheel, the driver pushes in the clutch, pulls it into gear, lets out the clutch, and the spinning wheel acts like a flywheel and starts the engine. To get the engine started, like I said, you push your clutch in, you put it in gear, and you let the clutch out. You turn the truck on. On the steering wheel, there's two levers. One of these levers runs the amount of electricity going to the engine. Another is the pulse of the engine. So, crank it up, open the electricity, the engine fires off, then you drop it down to idle RPM. When you get to a fire scene, you pick that up because that engine is running the pump. The pump is not running on its own. To shut the truck down, you drop everything to zero, push clutch in, drop it, and turn your truck off.
still on our adventure following these commissioners of McMinn County from 1822 all over McMinn County as they seek out a place for the county seat of McMinn County as directed by the legislature. We've already seen it didn't work out in Calhoun, which was the legislature's first choice to the commissioners. Then we went on to the second choice the legislature gave to the commissioners in Columbus. That didn't work out because of a legal problem with the land down there. And so we move on to the center of the county. We've already been to Cedar Springs, and Mr. Cassiter refused to donate or sell land there, so that didn't work out. And we've gone up to Pumpkintown and looked at that area up there, which was mentioned as this here, where we're at today, being nearby. So we're here today at the present site of Athens with Joe Guy, our McMinn County historian and archivist, an author, and our McMinn County sheriff. Joe, we're glad to have you with us today.
Thank you, Steve. Glad to be here. So we're here at a pretty significant spot in downtown Athens. When Athens was first formed, really the county was first formed, you didn't come down and just buy land. You had to go to a land office in Knoxville. And that's what William Lowry did. He was one of the very first landowners in Athens. He would eventually build this home that's behind me. And so Lowry evidently went to Knoxville and looked at a map, a hand-drawn map, and chose what he thought to be a good piece of property just based on that hand-drawn map. And they probably drew some of the creeks and other parts of this property in there that probably made it attractive to him. And so he comes down here about 1820 and comes up on this hill and finds actually someone else living here. There was an Irishman named William Gardenhire that had built a cabin here and had built some fencing and developed his own little farm. That wasn't too out of the ordinary back then. They call that a squatter, and you could actually have legal squatter's rights. And so what we believe Lowry did was to pay Gardenhire for his improvements, since he actually had the deed, Lowry did. And Gardenhire went on down to the Rogers Creek area and developed his own farm down there. So what Lowry did was construct this home behind us. It's really a magnificent home. It's about 200 years old now, and we're very fortunate to have one of the very first homes that was built in Athens. Now, this actually is not the very first home, but the first home in Athens is inside this home. What we think that Lowry did was build his frame structure around part of Gardenhire's cabin. And Gardenhire's cabin is actually in the back of this home, and it's sort of the kitchen area of the Lowry home. And so we have still standing the very first home that was here in Athens. So as Steve's already talked about, at some point about 1822, it began to be necessary in Calhoun to move the county seat. And primarily back then, and even as time went on, commissioners that were appointed to look for county seats tried to place them in the middle of the county. And that made sense because that would have been a long wagon ride from up in the Reagan Station area all the way down to Calhoun just to enter a deed or attend court or take a load of produce down to sell at a public auction or something. And so they did look at several other places, and for whatever reason, different reasons, those other places didn't work out. So eventually they came here and they talked to Lowry and they looked over the property. And even standing up on this hill now, there's this, you can see that Athens kind of sit out before me, and it's all nice and flat down in this little valley below this hill. And it's sort of surrounded by hills, which allegedly is where Athens got its name, similar to the Greek Athens that one of the commissioner's wives had read about in the book. And so they approached Lowry about selling or exchanging some of his land, and he was amenable to that. And it's sort of humorous to me in the act that actually formed the city of Athens to be the county seat. The commissioners valued the land as being not really valuable at all. In fact, they used the word poor to describe it, as if it were fit for nothing but county government. But it's because they valued land differently back then. They were an agrarian society. Where Athens is laid out, downtown Athens is laid out before me right now. Back then, there were a lot of creeks and there's springs and stuff down there. And so, as we all know, Athens up until just maybe 2 decades ago was was prone to seasonal flooding as well. So it was nowhere where anybody really wanted to live. And so they had to make some improvements, dig out some of the creeks, and develop some ditching and try to get some of that water out of here. So when they laid out the original aspect of Athens here, the original plat, it ran from about just across the creek up to about College Street, and then we got Green Street right here in front of us. It was actually Green Alley back then, and then you had Red Alley and Black Alley that went on toward the east, all the way over to about Hill Street, and that was more or less the original plat of the city. And one of the very first courthouses that were built was just a log structure, because they, and Steve can speak more about this, they were sort of being pressured by the state to move this county seat and to actually get it done. And so they actually received some letters of instruction to actually get things moved up here, as far as moving court up here from Calhoun. And so a log structure was built. It wasn't built on the square where the courthouse is now. That was sort of an open area. We believe, based on some of the old deeds and records, that the courthouse was a log structure that was about sort of in the middle of the north side of the courthouse square, about where Riddle and Wallace was. And so a courthouse was built. A jail was built at the time in an area that was right outside of town, that's just right up above us here, that today is Knight Park. They built a jail right up kind of on the pinnacle up there on the point of Knight Park. And they had to do that because jails were really nasty back then and weren't very healthy places to be. And so they kept them out on the edge of town. So we see them having court here in the later part of 1823. But the actual legislative document, the act that established the city of Athens, is clearly in 1822. But we do see them at the city growing and becoming what they set it out to be by late 1823. And we have those records. We're very fortunate. As we're fortunate to have some of our original homes here, we have our original records as far as the county court goes, that tells us and shows us that they did in fact move to the courts here and met here in the latter part of 1823. And it's been the county seat since 1822 and acting as the county seat since 1823. So again, this is a 200-year-old home. As Athens began to grow, it actually grew a little bit bigger in the 1830s. By the 1840s, we had one of the first railroads here. Athens was bigger than Knoxville. We had a railroad before Knoxville or Chattanooga, either one did. We had one of the very first railroads in Tennessee with the Hiwassee Railroad. And a lot of work was done to it. They built it all the way down past the Hiwassee River and got the bridge built, but then of course it went bankrupt. But in the latter 1840s, it was bought by the East Tennessee and Georgia and expanded all the way down into Dalton, Georgia. And so we had an operating railroad long before Chattanooga or Knoxville, either one did. And we had actually more businesses here. One wonders what might have happened if things had stayed that way. Eventually, of course, Knoxville and Chattanooga, because they were river towns and had the railroads, sort of outgrew us, but it took them a while to catch up and surpass Athens. Athens, of course, was very, had a lot of good things going on during the Civil War. This home behind me, again, was here then. We had several places, some schools, and our college was used, we know now for sure, as a hospital. We had a pretty significant skirmish or two around the courthouse square, just down below me here. And so it was literally every day almost there was a change in what army or what patrol, whether it was Union or Confederate, that might have came through. Some pretty significant people did come through Athens. Nathan Bedford Forrest camped in Cedar Grove Cemetery. General Sherman passed through Athens, and he stayed we think that he stayed out at the Van Dyke home, and his staff stayed downtown on the corner where the old Robert E. Lee is. But Athens grew pretty quickly, but we did suffer a lot through the Civil War. Of course, the courthouse was damaged, and after the war, a new one was built, and the old one torn down. That had been built by the Cleggs in about 1827 or so. That courthouse remained here. It was expanded in the early 20th century until it burned in 1964, and our present courthouse was constructed and opened in 1966, and remains our courthouse today. But Athens has really grown, and we've been known for everything from typewriters to milk. We've had hosiery mills. One of the very first things that Lowry did, he didn't just build one of the first homes here, he actually had a mill just down the way here that passed through several owners. We had a foundry that was on the corner of one of our streets here in Athens that wound up in Chattanooga as the Wheeling Foundry that some folks might remember. And so a lot of regional businesses actually started in McMinn County and in Athens. And we've always been known for a place to do business. Interesting side note, we had black-owned businesses before the Civil War, free blacks, advertised in the newspaper for their business. There was a bathhouse here that some of the Cleggs owned, who had been freed about 1850. And so it's a unique part of our history there. But North Athens began to grow and sort of took a lot of the influence, at least briefly, after the Civil War, north of town, and it grew quite a bit. But eventually everything sort of moved back to the Athens as we know it today. We developed and grew, and we moved. Our first fire hall still stands, and we've sort of crept up Jackson over the years with our fire hall and our city halls, old bank buildings, and then we built a city hall that still stands, and then we have the city hall and fire and police department where it's at today. But Athens, it's really a jewel. We're right here between Knoxville and Chattanooga. We have all the good things of a small town, but we are able to get places and if we need to for shopping, or we've got resources. But we've always been sort of a stopping point and a midway point between Athens and Chattanooga, between New York and Atlanta. And so we're always been sort of at a crossroads, and I think that makes us a friendly city because we've welcomed a lot of visitors here over the years to pass through or stay the night or maybe just do some shopping. So we have a proud heritage here, a proud legacy that we're very, very proud of. But it started in many ways on this hill that we're standing on now. So thank you.
Well, it's been quite an adventure, folks, as we've gone all over the county and ended here, right downtown Athens. And Joe, we thank you very much for sharing with us what you know about our history. And you're one of the best historians I know of.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't know if that's true, but I do appreciate being part of this. It's a great opportunity and a very significant time to celebrate 200 years of a community. And you look behind us and see just the beauty of the downtown on a Saturday evening. It's like this all the time. We live in a very stable and safe community, and it's sort of always been that way. We've had our ups and downs, but for the most part, it's a great place to be, and certainly a great thing to celebrate our 200 years.
It is, and this is a wonderful place to live, to have your family, to raise kids, and for those of you who see this in the future, who are thinking about coming to Athens, you won't regret coming here. It's a great place.
It is.
And so we say thank you to everyone who had a part in this bicentennial video, to all the city leaders, to our county leaders, to each one of our hosts as we've gone from place to place, trying to search out the true facts about the creation of Athens. Thank you, and hope you enjoy it.